minus 30 seconds. We are go for launch. T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff.
For today's event. Kim, would you like to come online and say hi to everyone?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.
Excellent. So first, I'd like to welcome you all again to today's talk with Dr. Pamela McCauley. But before we get into that presentation, I do have a few housekeeping items that I would like to go over. Give me a moment here as I pull up my slides. And of course, I'm having a little technical difficulty here. Let me try one more time. There we And that's not the right one. So I'm just going to go ahead and power through this. So obviously right now we are virtual. We're using YouTube Live to stream this event. We do have closed captioning available using YouTube Live's feature. You can find that button, that toggle button in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. If you don't see that closed captioning feature, we are pushing closed captions on our side through our Teams chat, so you should still see those show in your video player. Also, we are using YouTube's chat feature. You can see that on the right-hand side of the screen as well. If that feature is not showing up for you, you can't figure it out, can't use it, you can always email us. Any kind of question that you want that we'll use during our Q&A. That email address is ksc-ilovesafety@mail.nasa.gov. Again, that's ksc-ilovesafety@mail.nasa.gov. This session is being recorded, and we will make this available for internal replay about a week after this broadcast. And lastly, again, we are virtual. We're using several technologies to bring you this content, and as we saw today, sometimes things arise, technical difficulties come up. We do ask a little bit of patience as we work through those issues. So with all of that said, I'd like to get the program started. So Dr. Pamela McCauley is an internationally recognized innovator, entrepreneur, and engineering researcher in the development of mathematical models, human engineering, and engineering leadership. As an award-winning educator, she is on a mission to empower students and professionals to successfully pursue STEM educational, entrepreneurial, and career goals. As an author of over 100 technical publications, she is a full professor and taught industrial engineering at the University of Central Florida for 27 years and previously held the position of Martin Luther King Jr. Visiting Associate Professor of Aeronautics and Astronautics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. In January of 2018, she was selected as a program director for the National Science Foundation's I-Corps program, where she served in this role until 2020. In 2019, she was named Technologist of the Year by the prestigious Women of Color magazine. She's recently accepted a new position as the Associate Dean of Academic Programs in the Wilson College of Textiles at NCSU. As an award-winning educator, she is on a mission to empower women to successfully pursue STEM educational, entrepreneurial, and career goals. She presently resides in Raleigh, North Carolina with her husband, Mr. Johnny Michael. With that said, I would like to present to you Dr. Pamela McCauley. Doctor, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dustin, for the warm introduction, and thank you and Kimberly so much for having me. It's truly a pleasure to be with you today. NASA has a very special place in my heart, And I've said that many times. And so having been at the University of Central Florida for 27 years, I taught many folks from KSC and had many PhD students. Dr. Tiffany Alexander was one of my PhD students. So again, it's such a pleasure to be with you here today. And I want to share a few slides with you. And then after this, would love to have a conversation. So I think we all understand now that workplace safety post-COVID is really going to be taking us to a new level. And I love your slogan, know what matters and be mission ready. And I just have to say this, that NASA, I mean, you all really do emphasize safety in such a powerful way that, again, it's such an honor to be with you today, but you've had decades of leadership. And of course, I'm here to talk about safety and health, but this is Women's History Month, and we just finished Black History Month. And I just have to say to NASA, thank you, NASA, for your leadership in so many ways, not just in safety and health because of the importance of your mission, but also leadership in so many other ways and setting the standard as it relates to women and diverse people joining your teams and making those contributions. So now, thank you for setting the safety standard. Now, we know how important your mission is and the work that you do is. So you take safety very seriously, but as a result, you also empower and inspire others to take safety more seriously. And I had to have this. It's in our DNA. I said, go NASA. Safety culture's mission at NASA is to create an environment where everyone works safely, feels comfortable communicating safety issues, learns from mistakes and successes, and feels confident balancing challenges and risks while keeping safety in the forefront, and trust that safety is a priority. As an occupational safety expert, I have seen so many unsafe environments, and I tell you, I, again, am so pleased with how NASA does safety, and it is in your DNA. Dr. Tiffany Alexander, her dissertation focused on safety, and so I've had the opportunity to see just how serious you all are about this, and I assure you, it's setting the standard for so many others, because many environments do not at all. In this country, in these United States of America, there are many environments where safety is secondary. And as an expert witness, I've had an opportunity to see so many of these places, and unfortunately, seeing where people's lives were lost when it was totally foreseeable. So thank you again, NASA, for having safety in your DNA. And another thing I wanted to point out, the COVID-19 prototype ventilator that NASA developed in 37 days. So you see, I really do have a special place in my heart for NASA. So you go, NASA. And so now as we start thinking about this new paradigm shift in safety, since COVID-19, safety is on everybody's mind. So occupational safety is an issue that not only impacts the workplace, but our homes, our families, our communities. If you go to work and you get COVID and you bring it home, you've impacted your whole family. So I want to talk a little bit about science, talk about communication strategies, and then relevant storytelling. So from a COVID standpoint, post-COVID, we're going to have to be very empathetic with our safety strategies to demonstrate our concern for our fellow workers, our neighbors. And as Associate Dean, now I'm talking about getting back to campus in the fall. But there are people on my team who are afraid. They really don't feel comfortable coming back. And so as we face reopening, and I know with NASA, much of your work never stopped. And so many folks have been going back. But as we face reopening and having more and more folks around, and of course, and we know we have the vaccine and we're very excited about that, but then there's some vaccine hesitancy. So a lot of folks are going to be uncomfortable. And I think it's vitally important that we as safety professionals take that into consideration. And then when we get back to work, be sensitive to them. This research says that 1/3 of workers are highly likely to return when their office opens. But what about the 2/3 who don't want to? Can we keep getting the work done? How do we manage this and make sure that everyone feels comfortable and we're respecting their feelings and their wishes when they do come back? So these are new challenges for us in the safety and health community. And so these unprecedented challenges have impacted so much of our society, and our collective response is going to be essentially a testing ground to how do we create a safe workplace and effective protocols to protect all workers and society at large. So a lot of new safety challenges have come our way. But what I do, the new hazard, this is a new hazard, but much of this is familiar for safety professionals. Come on, we know as safety professionals, you tell people, If you're sick, stay home. Nobody, even before COVID, don't bring the flu, don't bring a cold, stay home. Okay, then wear appropriate PPE. Now we all know PPE as COVID protection, but there's always been personal protective equipment that you're supposed to use when in different work environments. And then practicing good physical distancing and observing good hygiene. So these are new protocols, but much of it is familiar to safety professionals. And then again, let's be empathetic in our communication. So let's get communications right. Now, I'm very sympathetic to leadership when it comes to this, because with COVID, everything's changing so quickly. And so I'll put out a memo about how we're going to handle something, and before the day is over, the chancellor has said something different. And so it's very frustrating to team members. So we really have to be serious about getting our communication right and be clear. And if things do change, explain why it changed. We have to cut through the scientific jargon and media and no political spin. This is about making sure people understand. So get our communications right and then continue to communicate. Once we say it, we're going to have to say it again. And then let's use those channels that folks are regularly using, whether it's email, social media, if you have a Zoom or a Teams meeting like this. So it's vitally important that we continue to communicate to folks in this season. And then educate our teams. Many of us who are safety professionals, we take a lot of this for granted. But many people do not have a clear understanding of what it means to be safe in these times. And I mean from everyone in the organization, from the lowest level to the highest levels of leadership, we need to make sure that we are speaking to them, we're speaking in a manner in which they understand, and we are answering questions so that they can feel comfortable coming back to work. And if they do get exposed to something, then they know the steps to take. Now, make the business case for wellness. I love this picture. You guys have a good time at KSC. But there has never been more interest in making a business case for wellness, because we all saw that people went home who were high risk, and a lot of this is avoidable. So much is being done to encourage employers to make the business case for wellness, whether that's runs as you all are doing or fitness memberships. And so organizations really are prioritizing this, and it's there's a true tangible business case to be made for having healthy employees. Not in addition to them just doing better work and feeling better, they're a lot less likely to be sick. And then science, pay attention to the science. I don't have to tell NASA that. That goes without saying, but listen to CDC, okay? Then, of course, we know the hierarchy of controls as it relates to safety, elimination all the way down to PPE. PPE is the last line of protection. But to the degree we can, let's eliminate the hazards. That's why I was so excited about the air purifier that NASA developed. So actually trying to eliminate those risks is so powerful. And then, I love this, relevant storytelling. We all know that storytelling is so powerful, but it's powerful in safety. And what storytelling does, it's a natural way to recount an experience, and really is one of the oldest tools of human influence. I remember when my daughter was growing up and she was starting to college, and I would tell her something and she wouldn't pay attention to me. But then my mom would call her and tell her something, and she'd pay attention to grandma. And so this happened about 3 or 4 times, and I was like, Mom, why does she listen so much to you? She said, you don't tell her horrible enough stories. You need to tell her horrible stories about things that happen if she does what you don't want her to do. And I said, but Mom, that could scare her. She said, you want her to be scared. So that was a real life example of storytelling that I have experienced, but it works in occupational safety too. Because it's often difficult to communicate to people about different procedures and rules and regulations, but everyone can identify with a story. And stories actually teach us how to model behavior. It can teach skills, provide behavioral cues. And it really is a way that we shape it in our memory. So as we start to think about going back and how to tell people to stay safe and to be safe, it's very powerful for us to be able to capture stories of success. And I like positive stories. Unfortunately, in safety, we know there are many stories that aren't positive. And sometimes we have to share those in order to get people to understand how to appropriately protect themselves and their fellow workers. And so, if you are effective at your storytelling, the listener will come away from the story with a few things. They'll understand what to do, how to do it and why it's important to do it in a certain way. And they will also clearly communicate this. And also, they will understand what are the penalties or risks for ignoring this established norm or this safety. And hopefully, they will be inspired to comply. And that's certainly our objective as we start to teach people about this. And some of the things you might want to do as an organization, invite your NASA team members to share stories of safety and health practices. I know I looked at your website where you have opportunities for people to report when someone's doing good or doing well in terms of safety, and I love that. But getting those powerful stories of resilience. We've seen a lot of challenge in 2020 and even into 2021 with the pandemic, with social and racial injustice, with the weather challenges in Texas. And so there are a lot of powerful stories of resilience, of people managing through difficult challenges that I think could be very powerful in helping to share your safety message. And then stories of compassion and understanding. We all know how the COVID era has really challenged some people from a mental health standpoint. We must be compassionate and understanding when it comes to that. So sharing those stories of compassion and understanding, because a lot of us may not understand how to be there for others in these seasons. So sharing those stories of compassion and understanding can help folks understand how they can be there for others. It can also help people who may be going through those struggles right now understand that it's okay to not be okay, to talk to someone, to get some help. So I really want to emphasize stories of compassion and understanding, and stories clearly that are aligned with your safety culture and your core values. So I would strongly encourage you to do some of that, inviting folks to share their stories, and would love to hear back from you on some of that. So your family needs you. I mean, having an accident you're not replaceable. You are irreplaceable. And so really helping people understand that, helping them understand to think safety. And I like these little funnies, but how do you put a big sign up there? Okay, think safe, and you got this guy about to drill through his hand. Come on, folks. So today, safety professionals and safety education, it matters more than it has in over 100 years. You matter so much today. And again, I want to say this to my fellow safety professionals. You need to make sure you're okay. Sometimes we're doing so much and giving so much, we forget to check in on ourselves. So check in on each other, safety professionals, because our work, just as, and obviously healthcare professionals, God bless them, they have had to work so hard through this entire COVID period. And so have our safety professionals. And our work is just beginning. When we reopen this fall and start to see more and more people back in places and spaces, I am concerned that many of our safety professionals are going to be overwhelmed. So I want you to make sure that you're checking in on you and checking in on each other, because we need you and we got a whole lot more work to do. And I wanted to share a little bit about my journey to becoming a safety professional. Dustin shared a little bit about my background, but I'm from went to the University of Oklahoma and did undergraduate and graduate degree there, and then came to Central Florida. And, when I talk about my journey to being a safety professional, I say we bring our whole selves to work. I love talking to young ladies and women, inspiring them to study, but there's my beautiful daughter and son-in-law. This is important. My grandbaby, you see who's the most important person on this picture, the grandbaby. That's me having a Zoom meeting with her. Isn't she so beautiful? And then, of course, my husband. But we bring all of us to work. And so really understanding the whole person, that really can help inspire folks to be good safety, have good safety consciousness. So again, back up to my journey. I started out as pre-med. I was going to be a doctor because my dad told me I was smart. And I liked science. And I realized pretty quickly that I didn't like the sight of blood. So I said, Daddy, this thing isn't going to work out. So I remember I actually went to the library and looked, and of course, I always ask when I'm in an audience with people, how many people know what a card catalog is? So I actually went to the library, found a book on different disciplines in engineering, and found out that I could study industrial engineering and use my interest in the human body without having to treat patients and see blood. So an industrial engineer was born. And it's been a joy as an industrial engineer, as a faculty member, as a safety expert, and then, of course, working with the government. I spent a year with the U.S. Department of State as a Jefferson Science Fellow. And this is a picture of me in Malawi. When I went to Malawi, I actually was looking at how to introduce innovation into the HIV and AIDS healthcare service delivery process. And so I have never, ever been more aware of the impact of my knowledge, my STEM knowledge, than when in a place like that, where small changes, very small changes, can impact the lives of tens of thousands of people. And that's exactly what you're doing now. So you're impacting the lives of so many people with your safety knowledge. So our safety knowledge can and will change the world, make the world a safer and a better place. Again, when I was in Malawi, I learned so much about the HIV and AIDS healthcare service delivery process and how to introduce those innovations. And again, it was such an honor to be on the team to introduce innovations. And I've never been more impressed with a group of people than the folks in Malawi. They do so much with so little. So thank you, NASA safety professionals, for all that you're doing. It is a joy to be with you today. I would love to take some questions, and keep doing what you're doing.
Wow, what a great perspective. I just have an echo. Let me see if that's me. If we could have you unshare your screen.
I sure will.
Thank you. Okay, great. So we do have some questions here, some good discussion here set up. First question, let me take a look here. Sorry, I have to find my screen of my questions that I just copy and pasted. Okay, so we're talking about the safety culture and the safety environment. One of the questions that we have, what do you do when someone has a negative reaction when I share a story of safety? And I think what they mean is if you're trying to share a good safety tips, if someone has a negative reaction about you trying to help, what advice do you have or what comments do you have on that?
Well, I would, because everyone's not going to be concerned about safety, I would share how it's so much more big, it's so much bigger than them. So it's not just about them. It really is about making sure that other people are safe as well. Some people are risk takers, but sharing with them and helping them understand that this is not just about you, that what you do impacts many others. And so in addition to you, your coworkers, possibly your family, so really helping them to look beyond themselves is something that I try very hard to do.
Excellent. Got another question here, and I'm curious on this one. I guess I knew that there is a safety occupation, but it's not something that I live in, so I'm not really totally familiar with it. What emerging opportunities are out there in the safety occupation field?
Well, that's a good question. There are a lot. As I mentioned when I was talking, the post-COVID era has identified so many new opportunities for occupational safety and health professionals, because every organization now is going to be looking to see what they need to do. If they're wise, they're going to be looking to see what they can do to ensure safety so that they can get things back to as normal as possible, or like we're all calling a new normal. There are opportunities in healthcare. What are the things that we can do to make sure healthcare workers are safe? There are a lot of opportunities in research. And think about this. Previously, PPE was only used in a few environments. Now PPE is going to be used in essentially every environment. In your restaurant, how do we keep people healthy and safe when they're in the restaurant environment? So really looking at what are the new ways and new and innovative ways, whether it's these ventilators that are air purifiers that are being developed, or whether it's barriers that are being put in place, or other PPE, and then do we design PPE that's reusable? So really looking at that from an occupational safety and health standpoint, understanding how people are going to use the PPE. There are research opportunities for that as well. So there are a lot of new and emerging opportunities from an occupational safety and health standpoint.
Excellent. Thank you. So
Sure.
we keep talking COVID, and we have a really good question here. And this is kind of a broad question, and I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are. What does the future look like post-COVID for the workplace in general? Talking about all these PPEs,
Right.
precautions.
Right.
What do you think we have in store for us moving forward?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what we have is we're going to have a mixed model of work, where you're going to have people who are on site and those who will remain virtual. And I think it's going to be really a challenge, but the smart business will figure it out, smart organization will figure it out, ways to make that even the playing field for virtual and for on-site workers, because I don't think that we'll ever get back to where we were before. So understanding how to successfully engage and innovate and collaborate with individuals that are on site and those that are virtual, and making sure that they all have equal access to the environment. And I do think that's going to be necessary from a safety standpoint, because again, there will be people who will not be comfortable coming back to work. Other things in terms of how the workplace is going to look, I think we're going to have a lot more space. Okay, so there's going to be a lot more distance between us. And so that, again, those physical distancing. I think we're also going to be offering PPE to employees at work. So making sure that folks have the appropriate PPE should they want to use it while they're in the workplace, I think is going to be the responsibility of the employer. And again, that's why I shared so much about being empathetic, really being sensitive to people, to their concerns, their needs, in these times, because we're all figuring this out. But unfortunately, if you're the safety professional, people expect for you to have it figured out, and we don't always know everything. So let's work together, be sensitive, be creative, be innovative, and be empathetic to each other.
Fantastic. We have a lot of questions, and you're kind of touching on several of these. So I'm not quite sure which way to go now, because they're so great, so good. I want to try to get to them all.
Okay, so and I'll try not to make my answers so long. I'm giving long.
No. It's great discussion, and then you have a lot of great insight for us. So when we get to the next one, I'm just going to go down the list here. Might seem a little scattered, but here we go. So this next question, do you have any specific stories that you would like to share when talking about safety? What's your favorite safety story that you like to tell people?
Wow. Let's see. My favorite safety story that I like to tell. There is the there was a little story about this guy who was an accountant, and he loved accounting. And this is not really my favorite. I should have thought of my favorite one, but an accountant. So he loved being an accountant, but he really felt like he wanted to do something more exciting. So he was walking by this construction site one day, and he said, "That's what I want to do. I want to operate a crane." And so he put his accounting down and learned how to operate a crane, and then was working in a construction site one day, and the crane malfunctioned and it fell. And of course, he had his hard hat on, so he fell and actually had several broken bones, but because he had on his hard hat, his head was not injured, and within 4 weeks, he was back working, operating the crane. And so he said that simple hard hat, just wearing a hard hat, saved his life. And so I like to tell positive stories. But a lot of the stories, I mentioned to you about expert witnessing. I have many stories where people lost their lives. And I tell those, and people's eyes get big and they remember. But I'd like to try to also do it in a positive way. So that's why I like that one, because a hard hat saved his life.
Yeah, and I'm a military guy, so we have these kind of rules as well. Wear your hat, wear your PPE, and you're right. It's those little things, because obviously something's happened in the past where someone got hurt by that example, and just that one little thing of putting a helmet on could be the difference between life and death. Yeah, absolutely. So great story. So we have another question related to COVID.
Sure.
Can you explain the hierarchy of controls as they relate to COVID precautions?
Well, the hierarchy of control, if we think about the safety hierarchy, with the chart I showed were elimination, substitution, engineering controls, administrative controls, and then PPE. So the same applies to COVID, but from an elimination standpoint, that would be things like the air purifier. So cleansing the air. So making sure that you take any risk out of the air. Substitution, I don't know if there's really, I don't think substitution could be considered where a person works virtually, or that could be virtually, or that could be substitution or elimination. So instead of having them come into the workplace, you substitute their physical presence with their virtual presence. Engineering controls, we know from an engineering control standpoint, that's where you essentially are engineering the problem out. And so that could also be where you put barriers. So put barriers up so that you are controlling the access to the virus. And then administrative controls, that's basically management and leadership setting rules and guidelines on how you're supposed to operate in that environment. For example, saying that we're going to space people, instead of 6 feet, we're going to space them 12 feet apart, just so as they get up and move around, because if you just put them 6 feet apart, when people start to move around, they're going to be less than 6 feet. So that would be an administrative control, putting out rules and guidelines on how to set up the workplace. And then, of course, lastly, PPE, asking people to wear a mask, have masks, at the entrance to the every door coming into the building, sanitizer or gloves. So that would sort of be an example of the hierarchy in COVID.
Excellent. Here's kind of a question that kind of goes along with that, and you kind of touched on it. When it comes to day-to-day safety, people can become complacent. What strategies do you have to deal with or combat complacency within the workforce?
Oh, that's really important. I think you continue to communicate safety. I think you all have a good model where you have folks asking people to report someone that's doing something right, caught doing something right. And so I think you have to stay in front of people about it. Be innovative. You remember I mentioned those stories. So maybe run a new safety story, safety success story every week. Every now and then you might have a safety unsuccess story where someone didn't do what they were supposed to do. So keeping that relevant storytelling right out in front of them, I think, is really powerful.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the great things I love about our safety program is it seems like the leadership really is engaged in this. Our safety culture is pretty strong here at Kennedy. I'm a little biased because I help the team, but I do believe in our safety program.
I agree, Dustin. I'm telling you, I have been consistently impressed with the degree of focus on safety in the NASA culture.
So we have an email question. This is a good one. Will we ever get back to normal? Can we anticipate a return to workplace or having big events again? That's a legit question.
Well, it's a very reasonable question. I don't think we'll ever be like we were. I think it's going to be a new normal. I think we're going to see people wearing PPE for years, walking around in masks. I think on airplanes, we're going to see people flying with masks and shields for years to come. I do think that we will get back to having some large events once we have enough folks vaccinated. And I do think we'll start to see some large events, but I don't think it will ever be the way that it was before. I still want to, I love going to church and, having fun at going to sports events, but I would be concerned about doing that probably. I think we'll just see how the vaccine rollout goes, but I don't think that we're going to ever get back to where we were. We'll get close. It'll be a new normal, and we will have large events. But I think that the behavior will be different in terms of PPE and also in terms of some distancing.
Yeah, I agree. And for me personally, I don't want to be a part of the spread, what I call the spreading problem. So I'm still leery about getting together. I understand the mask and all that. I do wear a mask. I will get my vaccine when I become eligible. But I tend to agree with you. I don't think we'll ever get back to the way it used to be.
Yeah, it's challenging.
Yeah. All right. So we have another email question. Okay, this will be a good one to hear your perspective on. Should the story be changed when speaking to a different audience? This is a safety story. Should the safety story be changed when speaking to a different audience? Example, supervisors versus frontline workers. What are your opinions?
Yes, I think so. I think so. Different people have different flashpoints, if you will, or different triggers. I think you can emphasize different aspects of the story depending on who you're speaking to. You remember I said relevant, so it needs to be relevant to their day-to-day activities, to their day-to-day responsibilities, and really speak to an area where they have influence. Okay, so their behavior will change or their perspective will change in a manner that influences the way that they handle safety in their roles and responsibilities.
Thank you. So we got another one here. I like this question. But the basic question is mental health, the mental health aspect of safety. I know here within my specific work group, we have a weekly meditation session and a desk side yoga, like 15 minutes for each. So we're starting to see that or understand and realize that the mental health aspect during this whole year is very important. Do you have any comments that you would like to share on safety, mental health, and how they relate?
Oh, absolutely. That's why I share that information from a mental health standpoint. This has been a tough season. I think it's really, really important that we check in on ourselves, and make sure that we're not overloading. Some of us, we take on more and more and more, and really asking ourselves, how am I doing? What are the things that I'm doing to make sure that I am nurturing that my mental person, my psychological needs, and then I think it's really important to recognize it's okay if you're tired, if you're exhausted, if you're frustrated. Talk to someone. I'm huge on talking to someone, getting some help, and then resting. And so a lot of us, some people who are may live alone, are really lonely and suffering from isolation. And it's getting better. But talk to someone about how you're feeling, and then check on each other. I think that's one of the things that we really have to be willing to do, is to check on each other, and then be somebody's accountability partner if you do see that they're not doing as well as they probably could. Encourage them to get some help.
Absolutely, and I'll share just briefly. For myself, this past year has been difficult, being in isolation and not being able to be around people, and just
Yes.
the workload that just seems like we're taking on more work in virtual environment. So I know I have a short list of folks that I reach out to just to be able to vent, and
Absolutely.
it's proven very beneficial for me personally. So I totally agree with everything that you said.
Thank you, Dustin. And another thing we can do, because in this Zoom and Teams world, you can have as many as 10 or 12 meetings in one day, because it's your commute is a mouse click away, versus when we're in person and you have to walk down the hall or go to another building to meet with someone. So we really have seen people working a lot. Mm-hmm. And so I encourage leadership and managers to try to limit the number of meetings that are required. Give people time to, and here I'm preaching to the choir, but I'm preaching to myself too. I mean, I sometimes will have, I think Monday I had 11 Zoom meetings, and then I'm working until 8 o'clock at night to get work done, because I couldn't get the work done because I was in meetings all day. And the first Zoom meeting, the person in the last Zoom meeting of the day, you need your enthusiasm and attention as much as a person in the first Zoom meeting. So it's really important as leaders that we manage this season, because people are really being worked a lot.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. I mentioned the yoga and the meditation that we do. We call those Tranquil Tuesdays. Yeah.
It's called what Tuesday?
Tranquil Tuesdays. Tranquil
Tuesday. I think I'm going to adopt that. I need a Tranquil Tuesday and probably a relaxing Thursday too.
Absolutely. We also, the agency-wide, we've implemented every other Friday. I don't know if you've heard this yet, but every other Friday we call it Quiet Friday. So we try not to, everyone tries not to schedule meetings on that second Friday. So then you have that whole day to kind of catch up and not be worried about back-to-back meetings. Yeah, so the innovation that we've been experiencing in this environment has been pretty neat to see happen.
That's outstanding.
So I got another question. This one's a good one. I like this. It relates to Women's History Month. How can we celebrate women in safety?
Celebrate women in safety. You can spotlight them. Okay, you can spotlight women safety leaders who are having an impact. You can. That would be like, put them on your website. Feature them, do an interview with them, and share it on your social media channels. There are a lot of women who are doing some great things in safety. Also, I would encourage speaking to girls about safety, and talk to them about, because we're going to need a lot more safety professionals in this country and worldwide. So spotlighting them, interviewing them, sharing their stories, and talking to girls about safety.
We have an email question. Okay. Can you share a story about your experience in Malawi?
Sure. Wow. I mean, it was so powerful. I, again, went there to understand how to introduce innovation into the HIV and AIDS healthcare service delivery process, because Malawi is a developing nation and one of our poorer nations in the UN. And again, I was so impressed with how well they deliver the HIV and AIDS healthcare service delivery in the rural communities and even in their cities. And what they do, and obviously they're doctors or nurses, nurse practitioners, and they do task shifting, where the tasks that, because they don't have that many doctors, they shift the tasks that the doctor would normally do down to the nurse. And so then the tasks the nurse would do down to the nurse, like a nurse aide. And so they have more people who are trained at lower levels to help deliver this HIV and AIDS healthcare service delivery process. So it allows them to treat individuals all across the country. And I remember the picture that I showed, I was speaking to a group of girls. They asked me while I was there if I would talk to a group of girls about science. And so I'm happy to do that. And so, and when I went there, and I'm sharing with them about studying science and how they can be engineers or computer scientists and technical folks. And so one of the young ladies raised her hand, and she said, well, I did all of that. I study hard. And she said, and I want to go to school. But last year, my parents told me that they can't afford to send me to school anymore. And so, but I did everything you're saying, and it didn't work for me. And my heart dropped. I was prepared for questions about STEM or engineering or, why I wanted to do this. But to think that someone who wants to go to school, who is eager to learn, can't go because her parents can't afford it. And so I walked right up into the little bleachers and sat beside her. I said, sweetie, I don't know all of your challenges, and I don't know everything you're going through, but I think you're going to make it through this, and I think you're going to be able to go back to school and finish your education. And so after my talk, I asked the person who was running the program how much her school would be for the year. And it was only like $300 for the whole year. Now, keep in mind, I'm there as a member of the U.S. Department of State, traveling on a diplomatic passport. And so I was thinking, why? I want to just whip out my checkbook and write a $300 check and give it to her. But then I'm thinking, well, that might not go over so well. So I didn't. And I remember I got on the plane, and on the way back to the U.S., I cried thinking about this young lady. And so I asked my pastor as soon as I got back, I said, will you send her the $300 for me? And he said, of course. So I called the school back in Malawi, and I said, I would like to pay, my church wants to sponsor her school for the rest of the year. And they, so it was maybe a week or later when I called. And so I said, would you please get her and we can schedule a conference call? And they said they couldn't find her. They couldn't find her. And it broke my heart. I said, that's one time I wish I had broken the rules, wrote a $300 check right at that time. So I never had the opportunity to help that young lady. And so as a result of that, one of the goals that I'm having is to start a foundation where women can help other women in developing countries, help girls go to school, because I never want to feel that way again. And I never want a young lady who wants to go to school to not be able to finish school.
Wow, what a story. That poor girl. I hope she ended up going back to school. I really do.
I hope so too.
Yeah, because she sounded like she had that drive and passion and desire.
Right. And it was just heartbreaking. And of course, again, I'm trying not to break the rules and be a good citizen. That's one time I wish I'd broken the rule and wrote that check.
I totally understand. So this next question, it kind of feels like it goes along. What's been the most rewarding part of being in the safety field?
Oh, I think making a difference. I mean, I feel like what I do really makes a difference and saves people's lives. I also work as an expert witness, and it brings me great joy when I can provide my occupational safety and health or ergonomics or biomechanics knowledge to help someone as an expert who has maybe not been treated well at work or was put in a very unsafe position, where I can support them and write make a scientific case on their behalf. So I really feel like I directly and positively impact people's lives as a safety professional and as an ergonomics teacher. I mean, I've been teaching ergonomics for 27 years. I'd like to feel like I'm creating safety professionals like Dr. Tiffany Alexander at NASA. So it's rewarding to feel like that there's going to be an impact beyond my life for the use of my safety knowledge.
Excellent. Here's another question. This is a good one. How do you find the courage to stop work in an unsafe environment if you see it?
Let me just say this. Get it. Get you some courage. Do not work in an unsafe environment. It is not worth it. It is not worth it. You remember I said you are irreplaceable. Your fingers are irreplaceable. Okay, your limbs. I mean, if you are in an unsafe environment, then tell somebody, and then stop working in that place.
Absolutely, I agree. Totally agree. Another question from email. Do you foresee workplaces implementing the use of a virtual vaccine passport or something similar as a safety and health control method? Interesting question.
We've been talking about that. You know how we can require vaccinations for children to go to school in some communities, but I think there are going to be legal issues to be handled or addressed before we're able to actually do that, to require it. I think it will be encouraged and it might be incentivized, but I don't know if we can fully require it. And I think there are going to be some legal challenges if we do start to see that. And that's at least in this country. I know in some other countries where they may not have as much latitude as an individual, there may be some requirements. But I think it's going to be incentivized and encouraged, but I really don't think it's going to be required.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that was a good question. So you mentioned in your brief the business aspect of wellness. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that piece, because I find that fascinating and actually something that we haven't really, in my opinion, have embraced to the degree that I think we could. So please give your thoughts on this aspect.
There's a huge business case for wellness. I mean, healthy employees work longer. Healthy employees are more productive. They tend to get along better with others. If you're stressed and worried about your health, it's going to be you're going to maybe have more absenteeism. So there's a huge case for wellness, and so things such as fitness programs, encouraging site runs, such as what you're doing, those things have definitely been shown to positively impact individuals and a work culture. Weight loss programs are also incentivized, and of course, people tend to work longer and work smarter if they're healthier. So it's really, from an economic standpoint, worth the investment. There's a direct relationship between absenteeism and wellness. So making sure that people are healthy and well is going to increase their presence at work and also that productivity.
So I have a follow-up on that. Being that we're in this virtual environment, do you see a relationship between people being sick and not wanting to come to work, but in this virtual environment, we might not feel well, but we still jump on the computer to work. Do you see any correlation or relationships between those two ideas?
Oh, that's definitely happening a lot. People are not feeling well or not at their best, but will hop on a Teams meeting or a Zoom call, even in spite of that. So there's definitely, that is definitely happening. A lot of people don't want to go to the doctor in this season. And again, it's getting better now, but when COVID was on the rise, a lot of people, if they have a sinus infection or a stomach problem, didn't want to go to the hospital because you don't want to be near people who are potentially sick with COVID. So there's been a lot of delay in medical treatment. Many of our physicians and medical professionals started doing virtual appointments to begin to address some of that. But I do think that people are more likely to work not feeling well in a virtual space than going to work. And I don't want to encourage that. I want you to, if you're not feeling well, even if you're in a virtual space, take care of yourself. Go see your doctor, schedule a virtual appointment.
Yeah, thanks for that last bit, because I think some people would tend to just go ahead and jump on when you still need to take that time off to rest and your mind to rest. So
exactly.
Yeah, I think we try to work too much in this virtual environment, so we need to get away from that.
I'm here to tell you. Yes, we are some working people.
Yes. So this is a good question. I like this one. How can we impact the local community with our personal safety values?
Your local community you can impact with your personal safety values. I think in the community, that's a place where we really have to emphasize storytelling, because they don't want to hear what the rules are. They don't want to hear what OSHA guideline they could be violating, but really telling stories that are relevant to your community, how the community has been positively impacted, is a good way to help them understand the value and importance of a good safety mindset and not taking those risks.
Absolutely. I know during this whole thing, Mr. Cabana has been talking to us about how we as federal employees can affect our local communities and doing the right thing, wearing masks and, showing that example. So
and I'm glad you said that, Dustin. Yeah, one other thing is to be a good example, be that role model of safety and making sure that you're exercising the utmost safety whenever you're out in your community.
Absolutely. So I don't see any other questions. We've had a pretty good turnout with questions here. So
this has been great.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up. Do you have any final comments that you'd like to make before I start closing the program?
Well, no, it's just been such a pleasure to spend this time with you all, and I do enjoy any time I have the opportunity to engage good folks at Kennedy Space Center, and please continue the great work you're doing as it relates to your safety culture and positively impacting so many others. And please, let's do connect on social media, on LinkedIn, and let me know if there's ever anything I can do to support you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. McCauley.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
In honor of St. Patrick's Day, I've got my fun little hat on today.
Oh, that is too funny.
I mean, it's not PPE, but it looks cool.
I love it.
All right. With that, I'm going to go ahead and start closing this up here. I have a slide I'd like to show, and I will also ask Lauren or Heidi, I'm not sure which one, to come on and talk to us about this awesome little contest that we have going on. Give me a second as I pull my slide up. And of course, the gremlins are here today. Here we go. I think I'm showing it now. All right, take it away.
Okay. We want to thank everyone for coming and participating today. And thank you so much, Dr. McCauley, for sharing stories and for inspiring us. For those of you that participated in the presentation today, all attendees are able to enter a drawing from courtesy of NASA Exchange to get a discount code for the NASA Exchange, mynasastore.com. So please go and email the word story to ksc-ilovesafety@mail.nasa.gov. That's email the word story to ksc-ilovesafety@mail.nasa.gov.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Heidi, for that. Make sure you get that email in to enter that contest for that discount code. I would also like to invite everyone to our next Safety and Health Days presentation, which will be next week, where we'll have a multi-generational panel come on and just talk about all things multi-generational. Of course, here at Kennedy, we have 5 generations within our workforce, so a very wide range of ages. So we're going to bring some folks together and just talk about the differences and the things that we have in common and how we can break barriers between the generations. So please join us next week for that. With that said, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Dr. McCauley, your presentation was great and the discussion was fantastic, so I thank you for your time. And without further ado, we will wrap up this show. Thank you all for joining us, and we hope to see you virtually next week. Have a great day.